Hey, this is Travis Gafford, the double lift expert, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Obviously, people know the G2 League of Legends legacy is of having championship squads because the team won 4 LCS titles in a row, 2016, 2017, and then we came to 2018, we came to this year, we came to Season 8, and we had a whole bunch of turnover in players and staff. So let's start there. Obviously, a big move was the coach of G2 for that successful period was Youngbuck, and he not only left the team, meaning you had to get a new coaching staff in, but he left to your main rival. He left to FNATIC, the other very successful European League of Legends org. Now, obviously, this will have later implications to some of the rivalry between the organizations and some of the transfers that might happen later in the story, but I have to ask you straight up, I'll just say it as raw as I can. If I'm an outsider and I look at this particular scenario, this is really confusing to me, ocelote, because if your team's the best in Europe and you have great backing and you have all this great legacy, if someone goes and joins your rival, certainly, again, I'm foreshadowing some of the things that might happen later, certainly you can never account for people's like whims. Like, for example, maybe that person just woke up one day and they said, you know what, for whatever reason, I just need to leave the team and I'm going to go to this person. That guy you can't reason with, maybe he would do that anyway. But if it's like your main rival and we're talking like comparable levels, like you've got similar money to them, you've had similar success to them, if someone leaves and goes from one to the other, people are going to ask questions, right? If someone goes from Manchester United to Manchester City, they're going to go, why does he do that? So what would you say on this move? Why did Youngbuck leave G2? Why is he not just the coach of G2 now?
Honestly, there was not like a heated conversation about him joining FNATIC or anything like that. It's not that we were looking for a different coach, but it was like, for us, it wasn't the end of the world if he wouldn't be with us for the next year. We both felt like, that maybe it was best to change a little bit, at least for some time. I have ego, a lot of ego actually, but not with these things. Like if somebody goes to FNATIC, somebody goes to Cloud9, which I consider my 2 biggest competitors. That means that they are providing them with something that I can't, or that means that whatever they want in their careers can't be provided anymore by me or by my organization. And that's okay. I can live with that. So there was no bad taste. I'm still good friends with Joey. I thought in the time he was a coach for G2, he was fantastic. And I think he's done a great job in FNATIC as well.
Okay, but the way you phrased that there wasn't like, I begged him to stay, but he decided to leave, or, he just had to go elsewhere. If you have a guy who's a coach of a team that's won 4 championships in a row, most people would say you'd do everything to keep that guy. You'd sell him on the vision of like, be in G2 for your whole life. Like, we're going to win more championships together. Why was it not a big priority?
Honestly, I build things by gut feeling, a lot of it. And there's 2 points onto this, and I didn't feel, point number 1 is that I didn't feel as if I wanted to fight for that, and neither did kind of the team, so I just let it play out. And then secondly is that I don't remember a single time where I was begging a player or anybody to stay. I'm a big believer in anybody that's staying here is staying because they believe in the vision of the organization and because they believe this is the right place for them. We do a good job at being desirable for players, and that's why the best players in the world, in the largest games out there, gravitate towards joining us, because they know that we just do everything we can for winning within the boundaries of respect and fair play and yada yada, of course, but we do everything we can within those boundaries to win. And that's why people gravitate toward us. So if at some point a coach or a player just doesn't want to be with us anymore, look at Matey and Sven going to TSM, which back then was one of the big competitors, not nowadays. Nowadays, not that much. But back then, there was no hard feelings. I think I told to Andy on Skype, the owner of TSM, I was like, yeah, well done, man. Enjoy it. I hope they play very well there, And literally 0 hard feelings. I tried to keep the players with a good salary, but never begged, and I told them the things that would get better or whatever, and how I was thinking about the team, the lineup, and still they wanted to go to the US. They wanted to go to NA. fair enough. They want to try out the waters. They want to try out what's going on in there. Good for them. It didn't go as planned so far, but I hope that this upcoming year for Sven in TSM and for Mitty in Origin is going to go really well.
Okay. Well, on that line then, since you brought up Sven and Mithy, this is again another key part of this championship team. This was one of the things that was established for a very long time, and most people thought, I mean, they used to have that nickname, Best in the West, like it was one of the best parts of the team, was this particular bond of the AD carry and the support player. Now, you alluded to it there. A lot of people who are just casual fans, I noticed because a lot of the internal stuff in the industry doesn't ever get publicized. You only hear about it through rumors or through people like me saying something that we might know. No one ever really knows where the financials of all the different orgs are or what the regions are like in terms of salary and average salary, etc. So a lot of fans, if they heard someone went from a European team to TSM, they're going to think, oh, that's just because, TSM offered whatever TSM can afford and, no one can afford to match that. Now, as far as I'm aware, and as far as I know, this is one of the reasons why Perkz is still in G2, is G2 can offer as much money as TSM. G2 can match some of these salaries around the world. So, similar question. Most people would say, you've won all these championships with these guys, you do everything you can to keep them. Why would they leave and go to a different region and a rival org if you can match or give them a similar vision? What can you say to that?
Yeah, we actually, if I recall correctly, we actually offered them actually slightly more money than TSM was paying. So they didn't leave because of the money. They left because they saw the grass greener in the US, and I don't blame them for that. The US does one thing really well, which is create desirability in League of Legends, especially. You hear about the LA Live, you hear about the Sun, you hear about all these great things happening, but then you arrive in LA, and you are this kid that loves to play League of Legends. You're this kid that dreams with League of Legends all the time. You take showers and think about League of Legends. And then you arrive there, and most people around you don't do the same things you do. Most people around you are talking about shit you don't care about. They go to cinemas, which you typically just don't want to go to because you want to play League of Legends. So I'm sure that many players that go to NA from Europe end up disenchanted with what they find. It's a lack of love for the craft, and too much love for the appearances, and too much love for marketing, too much love for things that don't matter, empty things. And I can't talk on behalf of any of the players that left, but I think that's what happens very often. But one thing is for sure, before you're leaving NA, before you get, I've traveled to NA a lot, and I'm way over that hype that NA gives you the first time you go to NA, But when you're a young guy and you've been in North America 4 or 5 times perhaps, and then you have this offer, of going there and just living that life, and then you get enchanted by it. You get, it's like the kiss of death,
Okay. What about this then? So in light of what I said before about Young Buck leaving, etc., obviously the team he went to, FNATIC, was the team that was the dominant team in Europe this year. They won the LCS splits. They had the great performance at Worlds. When you made your squad for this year, Season 8, if you're a team, like I said, where the legacy is like, well, we were the champions, actually we've even replaced FNATIC as the number one European org, number one team, etc., it can't be acceptable to do anything other than win, right? Anything except winning is basically going downhill. It's going to a step lower. Even though at the end, the Worlds result was very good and was obviously better than anything in the history of G2's orgs for Worlds results. If you look back on the year, it can't be enough, right, to have good results and to have some good placings, but not to win anything.
100% is not enough. We thought we had a really good team overall. And considering the fact that we changed 80% of the people in the lineup, we did a really good job. More than 80% if you count the coach and the analyst as well. Yeah, for the first split, and the analyst, we did really, really well. So I'm not. It wasn't catastrophic in the sense of. Considering our variables, considering, all the new lineup and, how many people we changed and so on, but it was catastrophic within the context of our history and within the context of what we want to accomplish as an organization. So, of course, getting second and then losing against Misfits, getting second in the first split and then losing against Misfits in the second split, 3-0 actually, was ridiculously. I mean, it was the lowest of lows, you know, for us. But what happened there, and this was actually the first time that I saw it live, is the team completely crumbled for like a week or two maybe. I've never seen such a low win rate in scrims. It was like 90% lose rate. I've never seen anything like that in any team ever, you know? It was unprecedented. So the team just crumbled, and we tried everything to bring them back, but I think a combination of missing home and a combination of being overtrained and being just burning out everything at the same time from 3 players at the same time, then everything just collapsed, you know? And that's what happened. Otherwise, I'm 100% sure that we would have been in the finals playing against FNATIC, and it would have been closer than the first split. So it would have been bad, but not as catastrophic as it ended up being because of the fact that we lost 0-3 against Misfits in quarterfinals. But with that said, what is quarterfinals? Semifinals, I think quarterfinals. And what was the other question? Yeah, but with that said, after losing against Misfits, it was like it was like being born again for the players, for the team. They felt they took a week off. We all agreed that a week off was the best thing they could do. They went to see their families. They returned and they destroyed everyone. Like, it wasn't even close. And then in the gauntlet, you probably saw the gauntlet as well. We just wrecked everybody in the gauntlet. The team was playing incredibly well. Then in Worlds, when nobody was thinking that we could even go past planes, we actually knew that we could reach semifinals and we could do very well at Worlds because the team was playing so well, you know? So I think it's bad timing. Just looking back in hindsight, it was bad timing that the lowest of lows was exactly at the moment when playoffs occurred in the second split. Otherwise, the year wouldn't have been nearly as bad. So all in all, it was a good year. We ended on a very high note, and it's better than anybody can imagine changing 6 people out of 7.
Okay. If I take you back to Worlds and the quarterfinals, and your team's in the position there where, because you're obviously coming out of your group as a number 2 seed, you're going to get one of the big teams. If people remember, you could have had, obviously, like KT Rolster was a massive team. You know, RNG, as you saw here, like the teams that you could get, in theory, there's no easy teams available here if you're number 2 seed coming out. But the team that you had in RNG, I realize because they're Chinese, people aren't going to think of it as ridiculous as when the Korean teams like the SK Telecoms of the world were out there. But on paper, this was just as bad as in one of the prime years where SK Telecom wins Worlds, being a team who draws SK Telecom. Because on paper, you were a massive underdog. It was the number 1 team in the world, the team that had won everything all year long. They even, at the time of when this match took place, people forget now, like as the playoffs went on, people got this narrative of like, oh, it's about the solo lanes and like strength there. That was after this quarterfinals match.
Yeah, that was after the quarterfinals, yeah.
Before the quarterfinals match, everyone was saying, you're going to play through bot lane and look at their bot lane, look at G2's bot lane, which is supposed to be the weaker part of the team. As someone watching and who can't play in the game, this must have been an incredible match to watch.
I mean, it was magic, you know? It was magic, and I know it was magic. Last game, Yordanov was 1 HP. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes.
But that was hilarious. I was like, there's no way we lose this game. Like, there's no way. This is the destiny, you know? 1 HP, Yordanov. So, I've never seen that before, actually. Actually, 1 HP. It was magic. Like, the team was playing really well. We actually knew we could beat them. Like, we genuinely, realistically believed that we could beat them because our scrims were going amazingly well. And it's not like we had a good day and they had a bad day. No way. Like, again, scrims are not everything, but the scrims give you a very good feeling of how good the team is in terms of understanding the game and in terms of understanding picks and bans and the meta game in general. So it was a game where both teams played their hearts out, and we ended up on top. One of the reasons is because Perkz is a fucking machine. Like, that was ridiculous. I have no idea. I don't remember. Like that LeBlanc game in the last game, I don't remember anything like that. In such a high stakes game, the 5th game in quarterfinals versus what's considered the best team in the world. I've never seen that.
Obviously, if you think of some of the teams, I mean, it's a very famous thing for NA as a region, actually, that famously their number one seeds tend to do badly at Worlds, like for whatever reason. Obviously, it was TSM a lot, but even CLG back in the day, and obviously Team Liquid now. And that's one of the reasons those people get a lot of...
You keep mentioning NA teams. That's not helping your case.
I know, that doesn't help in itself. But yeah, obviously, these teams have sadly set a precedent that it doesn't matter how well you do domestically, you can be the most dominant team ever in your region and win the split. If you do badly internationally, people will be very, very critical of you. And obviously, this is an area early on with the G2 team, which was a big sticking point, is that you would keep winning the split, but then internationally, nothing was happening. Right now that you had last year the MSI final, and this year you had the top 4 at Worlds, has it changed something in G2 that now the international results have come?
Yeah, this curse thing, I don't believe in it, but you know, there's always something. So in Spain, we say, cuando el río suena, agua lleva. It means when the river's making noise, it's because it's carrying water. And it essentially means that, you know, when there's smoke, there's fire, right? And if we fail to do well internationally so many times, there has to be something that's a common denominator in all those years or all those tournaments. It just doesn't click. And in hindsight, even in hindsight, I can't tell you what that was, but I think that we had a few players that in crunch time just did not deliver. And crunch time means all eyes on you, right? They changed their picks, they changed their play style, they became reactive instead of proactive. And when you become reactive instead of proactive in League of Legends is when you give up the game. You have to always come up with new routes, jungle routes or whatever it is. You have to come up with new trading. You know, you have to create, not just react to what the opponent creates. Then you'll always be against the curve. So I think that's what happened in those tournaments. I don't think there was a curse or anything like that. I just think that the guys that we had were very good when they felt comfortable, and not that good when they were not comfortable.
Right, you are known as someone who obviously has made some very bold statements. I mean, funnily enough, one of the ones you made back in the day, you even said it in one of my interviews with you, was about how, you know, you wanted to be like the first owner of $1 billion team, and like, you know, you wanted it. The joking way that you said it was quite a good way to put it. Was like, instead of being bought by Real Madrid, you want to be the one who buys Real Madrid, is like a sort of witty way to say where esports would change. And to be fair, actually, at the time you said that sounded ridiculous. To be fair, if people see the valuations that were in that Forbes article, it's not getting that crazy anymore. We're only talking like 3x, and you're at the $1 billion already by whatever was reported there, at least. And we'll just leave that to one side conveniently. But the point I'm getting to is this, is that you're someone who's been very bold when you think that, like, you can see down the path, as it were. After this Worlds, some people will cynically say, oh, it was just the meta, like with this particular, you know, whatever, it was a wide open meta, it allowed a lot of individual play to happen, so you had Western teams succeed. Right? If you make the semis, and if FNATIC can make the final, then surely it's not as a ridiculous question to say, can't G2 win Worlds?
100%. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do, you know? What am I here for otherwise? It's always really tough to be a pioneer in anything, and because what happens when you want to be a pioneer, or when you are the pioneer, what happens is that everybody's judging you upon the context that they know today. And the context that people know today is that a Western team can't win Worlds. And I refuse to acknowledge Season 1 as Worlds, because there was like 13 players in the game, and probably 15 viewers. So right now, people, or up until these past Worlds, people just believed that it was mathematically impossible for a Western team to win Worlds. And I always believed, because I've seen it in other kind of areas in my life, and I've seen it in other games as well, that's just not true. You know, in Counter-Strike, when could North America win a major, Thorin? Like, never.
Sure.
And now we're talking about these teams just being fucking good. Look at Liquid. I mean, I know they made these changes now, but let's see how that goes. But I mean, just great teams all together. At some point, the regions get it right, and they find the key to victory, and then they get closer to that trophy. So, as always, when you try something new that hasn't been done before, people will judge you as if, oh, this guy's arrogant, this guy's cocky, he's just delusional. The word delusional, I don't even know how many times I get to read it every day. But I enjoy it because it means that if you don't have any of those comments coming your way, it means that you're not trying enough stuff, you know. And that's in a way the way I envision this League of Legends team. I tweeted, I think, a couple of years ago, I will win Worlds this year or the next, and it was a mistake because you shouldn't put timeframes in those tweets because then you get held accountable for that. But I generally believe that G2 will win Worlds at some point. It is my dream, you know. This is the closest I can be to win Worlds without being a player. And as a player, I was never good enough to win Worlds. Now I am good enough at my job to put together a team that can win Worlds. So I mean, this is unnegotiable, you know. I don't know if I will accomplish it or not. Truthfully, because I don't have an oracle, I'm not an oracle. I don't have a guessing ball, right? Whatever the fuck it's called. But you bet that I'm doing everything it takes to accomplish that goal, and that's what matters to me.
So when we talked before, so Youngbuck left, went to FNATIC, Svenomithi went to TSM. Over the years, the key piece within G2 has obviously been Perkz. He's the only person who was there for all the championships, all the good performances. He's basically been the face of G2 since they got into the LCS. Right? Has it been the case that Perkz would have gone elsewhere during his time, and you've had to get him to buy into the vision of G2? Has it been the case that do you cater specifically to Perkz? Do you try and specifically get him on board with if we do these moves, would you like it? We're going to build the team around you. Has it been that kind of a vision? Is he just a star player who happens to play in the team? How do you think of him?
Yeah, so respect is not given, it's earned, right? And Perkz has earned the respect of being given the opportunity to have a big say in whatever happens in the team. The same way Lionel Messi is the same figure in Barcelona, or Ronaldo was in Madrid, or LeBron is in LA now, Lakers. It is what it is. The best players, because they're the best players, they have the pedigree and the knowledge and the network to ensure that, or to provide feedback and to provide kind of their vision of what they envision the team to be like. And ultimately, the organization's job is to find out who these people are, so who these leaders are, and then to give them leeway to build their dream team, at least for a winning organization that we thrive to be. And that's what we did with Perkz. He earned the respect over the years. He stayed here the same way I stood in SK Gaming for many years. He's been loyal to us. And it's not because, everybody wants Perkz. I can tell you that. I have no idea. Every year, there's 8-9 teams that reach out in the top level in the Western world that reach out to us. And you know, and he knows that. He doesn't even want to hear about it. All he wants to do is play the game and win in G2. And that to me means a lot. So of course he earned the respect.
Right, this next question is a tricky one because I know that it's very difficult to say anything about this particular topic, but I have to ask it because at least then people know the question was asked and it's up to you what you say. So throughout the history of the G2 lineup, there's been a lot of different moves. Svenomithi came from OG and joined G2. Obviously, over this last year, we had Jankos come over, we had Wunder come over. More recently, people heard this blockbuster move about Caps coming over from FNATIC. Now, even if people weren't talking about the concept of poaching or tampering, a lot of people would say on some level, at the very minimum, people are coming to play with Perkz. People have heard in the past, obviously this was the whole thing when Forgiven was in the team where it was Perkz has, when Forgiven was in OG, there was a complaint that Perkz has this Skype group and he's him and all these other players are sort of buddy and they run the European scene and all this stuff. So there was this big scandal recently where it was implied that Perkz helped to poach players, and some people think, he was obviously just doing this all along because he gets the players he wants and they come to G2. What would you say on this angle?
What I would say is that if people think that the reason the best players in Europe or in the Western world come to G2 is because Perkz poaches them, they're being absolutely delusional. The reason is because they see what the guy is doing versus RNG, or they see what the guy is doing versus whoever. They see that he's just 1v9ing 30% of the games, and the other games he's just the best player in the team consistently. And of course they want to play with him, And as a result of that, the moment a player's contract is coming to end, the player requests to speak with organizations, and they reach out. That's typically how it goes. Now there's a lot of how do you call that? So imagine you're a FNATIC fan. I know you're more than 12, but imagine you are. If they pick up, if your biggest competitor picks up Caps, right? Don't you grasp? How do you call that? Don't you pick up anything you can in order to convince yourself that the reason Caps left is because of anything else except the fact that he really wanted to leave FNATIC as an organization?
Sure.
I mean, of course you do. So then that's why I'm very empathetic about the fans of FNATIC, and very empathetic about the fans of all these teams that I have no idea. I don't honestly, I have no fucking idea who these teams are talking or are or whatever. Many of these teams, I called them parasites in the past. So you could argue that there is some level of salt. You know, you could argue there is some incentive in there to make things look worse than they are. So I'm not worried. But again, I'm empathetic about these fans. You know, they just lost Caps. They want to convince themselves that FNATIC did everything, or, you know, that he left because, I don't know, he's becoming a bad guy now, or whatever. You know, this. So it's just the play. I mean, this is the competition. It is what it is, and I enjoy it to some degree. So I'm not worried. I'm not unhappy about it. I know it'll keep being the case in the future for many other player transfers. It has always been the case with the biggest teams in the biggest traditional sports, and it'll always be the case for video game competition too.
So obviously one of the crazy parts about this particular transfer of Caps from FNATIC to G2 is that it's not as though mid lane was the problem in your team. As you've just said, the best player in G2, in fact, the best player in the history of G2 is Perkz, the mid laner, and most people even thought he probably had a better Worlds than Caps did. Like, he looked amazing. So does that mean that it was Perkz' idea that, like, okay, if we get Caps, I role swap to AD carry? This came from Perkz?
Look, I speak with Perkz, not a lot, but enough. I don't speak with all players a lot. I try to distantiate myself from them. But with Perkz, I get to speak a little bit more. And I remember we had a conversation, and I think it was in our podcast, in the G2 podcast, Esports with Ocelot. Did I actually interview you there?
No.
Why?
I don't fucking know. I'm not you.
Then we have to speak about that. Right. I would love to have you there. So in this podcast, I interviewed Perkz, and I remember, again, I don't know if it was in the podcast or private conversation, but I remember I asked him, do you see yourself playing a different role? And he said, yeah, why not? And I said, do you like AD carry or something like that, you know? He was like, it wasn't random. Like, it was really not random, because I know he plays a lot of AD, and it was this final comp thing. So I knew he could play AD. And I don't know why I asked that question, but I asked the question. And the moment I asked the question, I think he triggered something in him. And then we had follow-up conversations, and he was like, okay, so, you know, we're just joking around, like, you know, how do you sell yourself just playing AD, you know? There's a lot of very good mid talent in Europe. Not that much AD carry talent in Europe. So maybe you should do that, you know? And he was also the one, I think at some point, again, at the very early conversations, he told me at some point that he really liked AD. So honestly, it has been something actually very natural, you know? It wasn't, you know, if a good opportunity arose, he would consider playing AD carry. And that's exactly what happened.
See, I would think if you're the org owner, you'd be the one trying to talk him out of it. Like, you've got one of the best mid players.
I love weird shit like this. And I love it because, so I believe that if you're a good player, and this is true for Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, Rocket League, League of Legends, anything, if you're a good player, you know, or you're supposed to know every role, okay? Any role. And you can play any role to almost the best of your ability. Of course, if you play tanks, then you require a slightly different skill set than if you play assassins. It's a different mindset. But mid lane and AD carry is actually quite similar in many, many regards. So I could see him pulling this out. So when I saw this as an opportunity, I was actually very happy, you know? Trying stuff out. I know for a fact that this upcoming year, maybe there's 30, 40 kill games because we have a very aggressive team. I will have a lot of fun watching, and the fans will have a lot of fun watching. I know that this team will win. If they don't, then I blame myself for it. But instead of speaking to him or talking to him against doing it, I was, incentivizing the thought. I was like, this is a great idea, man. Let's fucking do it.
From the outside, there should have legitimately been a 0% chance to get Caps. Like, if there's anyone in that Fnatic lineup that there should have been no possibility to get, it should obviously be Caps. Like, if you think of anyone else, there's a world in which you could have seen, maybe they decided we stick with Soaz and so Whipple goes somewhere else. Maybe there's even a world where Reckless says, you know what, I've had a lot of years of Fnatic, but I'm going to go, try a different adventure somewhere else. The one player, when they make the final of Worlds, you think they wouldn't be selling, is the player that everyone thinks is like the best player and, in theory, the franchise player. People think, right, he's going to be in this team just like Perkz is in G2 now for years. Yeah. So how does this move happen?
Honestly, there's a lot of information right around it. But I remember I was in a business trip, and I was speaking with all these team owners from NA, and every NA team owner was telling me that they were in touch with Caps. They were in touch with Caps. They were in touch with Caps. They want to buy him. They want to get him. They want to blah, blah, And I remember that I was in the plane and I was thinking, what if, what if, And so it ended up happening. I mean, there's nothing else to say other than it was a very natural thought process. So we came up to this thought process naturally. And then secondly, the player Caps, the moment he saw this was possible, he really wanted to make it happen. Like really, really wanted to make it happen. Soon you will see the player contract database thing. I don't know if it's out yet, but I'm sure we will create news about it. You will realize what I'm talking about here. Like, we have a long lineup. The
implication is he has like the lineup signed for 3 years or something.
We have a long lineup. Period. Like, he really, really wanted to make this happen. And it was not out of emotions. It was not out of, just being crazy or something like that. It was just out of, he truly believes this team can make history. And he truly believes in the players that are in the team right now. So he fought really hard to make this happen, and so did we, of course. But he fought really hard to make this happen. He sacrificed a lot of things to make this happen.
Right. Since obviously back in the day when you were an SK player, SK Fnatic had its own rivalry in League of Legends at that point in time, and in the latter years it's been G2 and Fnatic because these are the two dominant teams, that have won all the splits. Is there an extra satisfaction in taking, as I said, not just the star player of Fnatic, but in theory, their franchise player? They probably thought in their minds this was the guy they were building their team around for years to come. Is that extra satisfying?
Yes, it is. I can't deny it. It absolutely is. You know why? Mainly, I wouldn't care as much if they wouldn't be as salty as they are. But they're so salty, And you know what I like? I like because I know how these people are. I know how these businessmen are. I know all these team owners, and nobody is a saint. Nobody is evil, actually, because if they are evil, at some point, the credibility gets tainted and they get replaced by other team, or they're out of the equation at some point. But I know that nobody is a saint. And some of these brands and teams have this aura of being such a great organization and such a, so humble in defeat and humble in victory and, and so gracious all the time. And I know them. I know that's bullshit, So every time I saw that whatever comment I did was triggering salt in them and showing their real face of being really sore losers, I was like, fuck yeah. Now I'm going to milk this. I'm going to make sure I have as much fun as possible because I know these people. The community deserves to know how these people truly are. And that's why I started having fun on Twitter, Honestly, if I'm honest with you, I wouldn't have gone nearly as far as I did if Sam wouldn't have suggested that we poached his player when we just got in fair and square. And secondly, if Sam wouldn't have leaked our Caps announcement on purpose.
Right. For people who don't know, like whenever that move is done, that is basically like, I'll just say it right up. That's considered bad etiquette, because what you're basically doing is you're sort of saying, since I've lost the player, fuck your announcement.
Exactly.
I'm just going to do the announcement for you. Because you notice most times, even if you transfer the player and you didn't want him to leave, you let the other team do the announcement that he's joining that team. Like,
exactly.
It's a big difference leaving and that you're telling where he's joining.
It's just saltiness. It's just being a sore loser, you know? And, you know, I actually told Sam in WhatsApp, I was like, listen, Sam, like, I would never do this myself. Like what you did, I would never, ever do myself. Doesn't matter what you do to me. I know this is business etiquette, you know, this is basic human decency. I would never do that. And you can quote me on this. In the next many tens of years, this will never happen. But on the other hand, this gives me leeway to have even more fun and keep triggering you. And I call him DJ and all kinds of things. I'm having fun. I mean, I'm not saying anything terrible. I'm just having fun with it because I know he gets salty. They get salty. When I say he, also FNATIC as a whole, also the fans of FNATIC get salty. I think it's funny. You know, I receive death threats, but I don't give a shit because I know they don't mean it. It's all fun and giggles. I just hope to kick their ass next year.
Okay, right. Well, obviously, since earlier in the interview, you already said you think G2 is going to win Worlds one day and it's the dream and you know, this is what you're going for, right? Some people, when you make a move like this, would try to do what's called like managing expectations. Like they would tell fans, listen, like Perkz has just swapped roles, you know,
fuck that.
Caps is a new player. Let's not go too quick. Let's see how it goes and then let's take it from there. Like,
fuck that.
You're telling me like about the hype of like what this team could do and why Caps joined, etc. What should we expect from this G2 lineup?
Yeah, I hate this fake modesty thing, you know? Just the reason we got this team together is because we believe it can be the best team in the world. Period. If they don't become the best team in the world, that will be a failure in our eyes, and we have to fix it. And I don't think there is any better way to deal with potential success. So what I tell everybody is you should be hyped about this team. You should expect bloody games. You should, is that a word? Yeah, bloody games. Yeah, bloody games. You should expect very important. You should expect a lot of weird stuff because, I mean, I can clearly see us first picking Aatrox and nobody knowing where the fuck he's gonna go, or Lucian, and nobody knowing where the fuck the champion's gonna go, and I think that's something that puts us ahead of other teams, especially in a very fast-paced meta like the one we have right now. I think if the meta becomes boring in the sense of long games and late game AD carry, I think we will not be as good as we would be if the meta is early game based, because we clearly have a very early game focused team, early and mid game. Jankos is incredibly good early game. I think he should be playing like Olaf, Elise, and all these kind of early game junglers as much as he can. And then we have an incredible top laner that can play both tanks and bruisers. Mid lane, Caps can play anything. He's played Azir incredibly well, which is a more controlled champ, and he's played LeBlanc incredibly well. And then we have Perkz, who literally can play Yasuo bottom. You know what I mean? So I think it's a really fun team, and everybody should be hyped about it. Regardless, I mean, I would be lying to you if I would tell you I'm not hyped. I'm fucking hyped.
So if people remember, when the North American LCS was going to franchise, there was a report that came out. Again, obviously no one can confirm some of these things because it's just a report. That said that G2 and a bunch of other European orgs had actually applied to be in the NALCS for franchising and, you know, wanted to move over, right? There is now franchising coming to Europe. If hypothetically that there was any truth to that report and it was ever something that happened, does that mean that franchise is something you always wanted, and that's a good thing that franchise is coming to Europe, and is it done the right way?
So I can't comment on whether or not we applied because of the NDA, but I can comment on whether or not I like the franchise system. Yes. And I definitely do like it. And the main reason, and this is the bottom line, there's many reasons, but the main reason is because, you know, I always talk about these parasites teams, right? But truthfully, some of them, not all, but some of them were parasites in terms of content creation only as a result of the system in which they were a part of. Let me explain. When you can get relegated to second division, then if you don't have a top team, because maybe your budget is not high enough, and maybe because your brand is not desirable enough, like all these things come into play, right? For a player to choose you, for a top player to choose you as the organization he spends the next 3 years on. When you don't have those things going your way, then you have to be okay with mediocre teams. And mediocre teams are never going to be winning the whole thing, unless rare cases, except rare cases. They may get relegated. So then every dollar, every piece of effort in those teams goes directly to survive. So every dollar they have should be going directly to improve the lineup in any way they can, and to improve the coaching staff in any way they can, everything around competitive success, right? As a result of this, there's not that much money and resources left for content creation. So the mere creation of a franchise system will allow for teams that don't necessarily have winning in their DNA to be unique for a different reason, knowing that they will not get relegated. Of course, there is always worst case scenarios, which LEC is covered against. And those worst case scenarios are, for example, tanking all the time, right? And just profiting from having a team there. Well, I don't think that'll be allowed, right? And that's a good thing. But you know, there's a meaningful difference between tanking purposely year after year and having to fight for survival every fucking day. So I think that meaningful change will change the overall appeal of the league, and we'll get more eyeballs, more fans to watch us.
In the past, some of this conversation when we talked about this Venomythi aspect and we talked about like keeping hold of someone like Perkz, the implication always was, even if a team's amazing in Europe, if the right North American org comes asking, their players will at least consider leaving. Hence why, you know, like even like, so the last time Europe had the best placing ever, when FNATIC 2015 went all the way there, immediately right afterwards, Huni and Rain over the heart of the team, which bought and they went off to Immortals, you know. We've seen this happen a number of times. Does franchising for Europe kind of change the balance of power in that sense?
I guess a little bit it does, maybe, but these are all market dynamics. US investors invest in North American assets in a much more aggressive way than European investors invest in European assets. Now, for the case, G2 is the only team in Europe that happens to have an incredibly large North American investor group. I'm not counting Misfits as European because Misfits is a North American endemic team, same first place. But European endemic teams, G2 is the only team that has this amount of incredible ownership group from North America. This is rare. So what happens is that European investors are much more defensive. They are looking at every dollar and saying, this is the valuation I see in the company, and it's a multiple of whatever amount of revenue you make every year. Whereas North American investors look at your company and say, I believe in the founders or the founder, I believe in the industry, and I'm not gonna die on this hill, on the hill of valuation. You know, I'm not gonna die on this hill of terms. So a price tension is more possible to occur in North America than in Europe, and as a result, valuation higher in North America than in Europe, and as a result, teams can raise more money without being diluted as much, which as a result goes into the player salaries. So I think that is a dynamic that will keep being exactly the same way with or without LEC. And for that reason, I think North America will more often than not pay more than Europe and better than Europe. But I think that there are exceptions, you know. FNATIC and G2 are the two exemptions where, and I guess Misfits could come into play as well, in which top players want to play for these organizations because they know they kick ass, you know? They know they're great for the brand, they know they're great competitively speaking, respectable, they will not screw them over, and all these things that for a player is very important. one thing I would say is that in recent history, we've seen, North America being a dead end for many successful careers. And I think players are growing increasingly disenchanted with the idea of going there, which is a good thing for Europe and a good thing for LEC. Now in LEC, if you compare right now the quality of players from LEC versus the quality of players from LCS in North America, I will say that EU has the edge, actually. It's actually unbelievable. The talent we have, the teams that we have right now, it's going to be super competitive, man.
Right. What I'm about to say, I can say in the context, I'll put it like this. So the G2 org, as I said, with some of the good international results, making the final of MSI, making top 4 at this Worlds, those results alone in the 3 years that G2's been an org in the LCS era already match any of the best results any North American teams have ever had in the history of LCS. Like obviously CLG made that MSI final a few years back, and this year they had Cloud9 for the first time ever. A team made the top 4. So your org alone's had as good results as that entire region for, we're talking like 7-8 years at this point in time. Do you have a personal theory or like some kind of observation as to why, no matter how much money they've had in North America, even when they've had talents come over from Europe, they've never been able to get the same international results generally as Europe? Do you have a theory as to why?
Yes, I do. First of all, there is innate value in having more money. You have access to better talent more often than not. Simple. And that's what North America has. And we'll always have an edge over Europe. And that's why I think we have an edge over other European teams, because, again, we have the North American ownership group. But I think that Europe is more known, and this also is the same case for startups, is the same case for business people in general. European talent is more known for getting shit done, whereas North American talent is more known for knowing marketing and how to hype shit up really well. That's why LA is the pinnacle of entertainment and New York is the pinnacle of brands and brand partnerships in general and media agencies and things like that. Whereas Europe has some of the best operationally powerful people. Like they're just incredibly strong as being head of operations of a company, things like that. So I think that this translates into the culture of a team as well. Like I told you before, European teams will break their bones to succeed because there is no other option. And I'm generalizing. It's not always like that, but you feel me. More often than not, it's gonna be like that. Whereas North American teams, more often than not, are gonna be more focused on content creation and brand building and making shit look like gold. Just simplifying. So yeah, that's I think the main reason why this happens. It's a cultural thing. And I think that's why whenever South Korea or China truly takes something seriously, there's not much of a competition, I think. But I'm making assumptions based on a really short time frame, because unlike in soccer, which has been around for 120 years, esports is around for, truthfully, 20 years, I guess, right? But
sure,
truthfully, less than that. Like when millions of people were playing these games, let's say 10 years plus, right? And so I don't have enough data points to understand what I just told you as truth. But I think that that's the path of where that's at least the way I think right now.
Obviously, this year you did have a Korean in your team. You had Wadid, the support player. If we go back the years before that, obviously you had Trick in the lineup and you had Expect. Right, for this year, no Koreans, but people have seen elsewhere. Obviously you had a big time signing of like Gorilla, for example, when he went over to Misfits. Yep. This is the kind of signing that we haven't really seen in Europe, where you get like a massive name player who really could be like on the best Korean team, but he chooses to come over. Are you open to the idea of having like going after big name Korean agents in the future?
Yeah.
Is that something you think's fine, or do you think you should try and stick with European talent where possible? What's your philosophy?
It's better. This is like the same story as national only Counter-Strike team versus international. There's pros and cons. The pros is that you will likely get in a better player because the region may just be better. But the downside is that language is going to be a problem. And people say, yeah, well, everybody knows how bot lane is, bot lane, mid lane, push, go top, whatever. It's not like that. It's a day-to-day, it's the waking up and understanding each other on a cultural level. It's understanding each other on a level that's deeper than just conversational. And that is a problem with people that come from outside your region. To some degree, you feel you already have that by having multiple different countries, teammates from multiple different countries, but at least it's within Europe. And yes, Poland is different than Spain, but it's not as different as Poland it is from South Korea,
Sure.
Culturally speaking. So the challenges that may arise from that are on a different level. I'm not closed. I'm actually generally open to bring somebody from Korea. As a matter of fact, we brought Trick. I remember nobody even knew who Trick was, and we knew that guy was gonna destroy everyone, You remember he was like MVP of the split and rookie of the split and things like that. He was amazing, and nobody knew him before, So I believe that in this raw talent from Korea or already proven talent, I mean, if you can bring Faker, wouldn't you? Chances are you would. So, but on the other hand, you have to acknowledge that there are downsides to it. There are 100% downsides to it.
Okay. What would you say at the end of this interview? What would your parting message be for people in terms of the League of Legends team, like where the vision of the team is, etc.?
Yeah, there's 2 points, I guess. There's point number 1 from an organization standpoint and point number 2 from the team standpoint, right? Lineup standpoint. And I always say from an organization standpoint, don't read our tweets with what's the word? Cynical eyes. Always try to have fun, try to look at it as it is, entertainment, blah, blah, blah. But I will not do that because our people, I guess, know the drill. Whoever is hating already is because there's no way I can get them to be our fans at all. So what I will say is that when looking at things from your point of view, where you don't know all the data available to you, I mean, when you don't know all the data, only the data that's available to you, just look at things from a macro perspective, okay? Who has lost players and coaches and has kept cool throughout the whole process and has kept those people as friends? Who has lost, this amazing talent to other teams, many times the biggest competitors, and simply not gave a shit, became the bigger man? They didn't leak anything. They didn't tell anybody that these players or coach were poached, when many times we had reasons to believe this. Who did that? And then ask yourself, is these guys the bad guys, or are those other guys the bad guys? And if so, why? So don't the same way as it happens with just news in general about the world, may there be politics or anything really, just always look at it from a rational standpoint and look at it from the standpoint of, hang on a second. This team has 12 teams that succeed competitively, and the best players in the world gravitate towards this team. Is this team that bad? Well, chances are they're not. Same goes for sponsors, investors. We have, again, it feels a little bit defensive to explain myself like this, but I think it's fair to mention, even though it may sound very simple, this very basic concept. That's from an organizational standpoint, and you'll have fun this year. We'll keep bantering online. And from a lineup standpoint, I expect 30 to 40 kill games, and I expect a few losses. I expect losses, actually, maybe plenty of losses. But I'll make sure you guys have fun. It's gonna be bloody games, okay? We may sometimes not have an 80 carry, We may sometimes play some Yasuo bot lane. Who knows? Perkz is feeling funky. And that's a good thing. You want Perkz to feel funky. Caps is feeling funky, and that's a good thing. You want Caps to feel funky. You want Caps to play Aurelion Soul or some shit like that. Roam level 2 bottom. You tell me that's not cool. It's gonna be fucking cool. We love you. I love you. And I appreciate that you took the time to listen to me. Talk to my friend Thorin. Oh, wait a bit. YouTube.com/oceloteworld. I'm actually editing my first vlog right now. After years, actually. I enjoy editing. I found it again. And my Twitter, which is right below, Thorin, or up? Where is it?
Right below, I think.
Oh, right below. My Twitter is right below. And my Instagram is @oceloteworld. Please follow me. I am an idiot. And I like to have fun. You probably have fun with me.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
This video was kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas, Snazore Westerlund, Gardner Wilson, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, James Harding, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, Daniel Yordanov, and as always, a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for some of my upcoming content? Perhaps you want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA. Do you want to see some teasers? See who's going to be the next guest on one of my shows? Maybe you want to take part in an esports discussion with me. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.